Elden Ring Nightreign is kind of like a game that could have just been an update, like adding a horde mode or a PvE arena, as well as like a boss rush mode to Elden Ring. You can pretty much attract the exact same audience and accomplish the goal of having the dedicated fanbase get something to test out all their builds and game knowledge on. But honestly, I am glad that they took this route instead and made a standalone game. Now, the benefits of it being a standalone game is obvious. You have a lot more dedicated support, better balancing, more creativity, and just seeing a lot more original stuff story and gameplay wise than you otherwise normally would. But Elden Ring Nightreign kind of takes it a step beyond, as it is genuinely a polished and refined roguelike game. This game definitely went through a whole bunch of changes because I get the vibe that it was play tested thoroughly. The timing of the days feel perfect to where you always have stuff to do, but not feel too overwhelmed. The placement of points of interest are well thought out because it gives you enough time to decide where you want to go while having enough space to see what's in the distance. And the fact that these points of interest are randomized by structure and location just makes it even more impressive. Also, the weapons, buffs, and rune distribution were amazing too. You can literally take your time and play it safe for day 1 and day 2, but still have enough levels to make a fair attempt at the final Night Lord boss. If we did have a boss rush mode in Elden Ring, it would be pretty cool to test out and make some builds, which is my favorite part about these games, just making builds. And in Nightreign, every single run is just you making builds, but you're not restricted to farming, upgrading weapons, limited respecs. You just pick up and go. And the build creation might seem streamlined, but it's definitely not watered down at all. There is lots of nuance there. And honestly, I just appreciate the simplicity of it sometimes. And I do also appreciate that they show us the numbers of some of these buffs and that the rarity system actually makes sense. Like the higher rarity stuff are the best weapons in the game. So we don't really have a case where like the most generic and basic fist weapon is like the best weapon in the game. Like, yeah, the star fists can still be good, but as soon as you find like any purple or gold weapon, they're just going to do twice as much damage, and they're typically going to be the cooler ones to use too. Another thing I really appreciated is all the small, minute quality of life details to incentivize being fast-paced and aggressive, the seamless leveling process, picking up items, the wall climbing. Literally any single time you wanted to get on top of a cliff or climb over something, the game somehow always manages to put a spirit spring or a collection of easy rocks to climb right there in front of you. Sometimes climbing without these specific rocks can be a pain in the ass, but it's mostly good. Now, this is a game where there is going to be a lot going on, and your first few hours are pretty much all going to be trial and error, but once you adapt and recognize what areas of the map you should approach on the first day or second day, understanding where the teardrop scarabs can spawn so you can actually get a bunch of talismans, knowing which combinations of perk and modifiers synergize well with your characters or your teammates' characters, there's so much to learn in this game, and every run, whether you succeed or fail, is going to result in a learning experience and also guaranteed loot in these relics. Which this relic system isn't anything too groundbreaking or complicated, but it definitely adds a lot to the build creation and sense of progression. In my dozens of hours, there are still perk combinations out there that I'm looking for, and this can be tedious by having this big randomization aspect to it. So hopefully we do get an update to where we can at least guarantee being able to buy higher rarity of relics. Now, a big part of the build creation in this game is going to rely on which Nightfarer or character you play with, and every single character is very enjoyable and powerful in their own right. Some characters like Wilder or RNI are just good at any facet of the game, whereas others like the Recluse or Revenant are kind of more reliant on multiplayer as they offer better support, and a character like the Executor does best in solo play. Now, one criticism I had for the Nightfarers during the network test is that they all felt very similar to each other, or just compared to your average Elden Ring build. Now, they haven't really done much since then to make it feel drastically different, but there are many character-specific relics that can help enhance your builds, and now knowing what the stats are for these characters, it can definitely help us understand which types of weapons and buffs they all benefit from the most. Obviously, the more knowledgeable you are, the more nuanced your builds can be. Now, I'm not going to cover these characters in too much detail because I will eventually make some in-depth character guides coming up soon, so definitely do subscribe for that. Because next, I want to talk about the Nightlords. The only completely original bosses that you see in this game. You'll fight these bosses if you manage to make it to day 3 of your expedition, and they will definitely be the biggest challenge of your run. Now, I'm not going to show all of them off for spoiler reasons, but every single one is a cinematic masterpiece. From how they look, the music, skyboxes, sound design, and how flashy the attacks are too, they're just so cool. Now, a few of them are kind of annoying and sometimes even boring, but they are mostly good bosses. And From Software managed to accomplish them being very cinematic while not making them be like bullshit difficulty either. Yes, some bosses might seem like they have a lot of visual clutter and roll-catching attacks, but from my experience in fighting these bosses dozens of times over in both solo and in a group, they are not more challenging than the main Shadow of Erdtree bosses. I think those ones are harder than the Nightreign bosses. It might take a bit to get used to their movesets because if you die and fail, you have to go through a whole 40-minute expedition just to be able to get back to the point you were at. But the more you fight them, the more you'll understand. And as bad as I really want to show off the final boss fight and talk about it in great detail, I'm not gonna, but the best way I can describe it is that it's like watching like a new gen Final Fantasy cutscene. It is like unbelievably cinematic, but somehow, some way, they also managed to make it mechanically really good too. Like, I don't even know how they pulled it off. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment and like say it's the best boss fight they've ever made, but in my opinion, it's literally up there with the likes of Gale, Ishin, Mesma. Like, it's literally that good. Honestly, it's probably just worth buying the game just for this one boss. Anyway, let's talk about the downsides. Gonna flip the script, talk about the things that I do not like about Elden Ring Nightreign. Going to stay on the topic of the bosses, because yeah, as good as the Nightlord bosses are, the rest of the bosses are a big pile of trash. By far, and I mean by far the worst part of the game. I do not know why they decided to show Dark Souls bosses being a part of this game, only to add 6 of them, 2 for each game. And there's also only 2 Elden Ring Remembrance bosses that actually make it to the end of day boss list as well. Now those 2 bosses are good. The Dark Souls 3 and Dark Souls 2 boss choices were great. The Dark Souls 1 boss selection was kind of mid, but it was still way better than the average end of day boss anyway. Like, I didn't want to spend my entire days fighting bosses like 3 Zamor Knights, a Sanguine Noble, Ulcerated Tree Spirit, Albinorix, and worst of all yet, you can fight these exact same bosses 3 times in a run. I had a few runs where I fought like a Golem boss 3 times, or I fought a Crystallian boss 3 times. And the reason why this happens is because they don't vary the points of interest across every single expedition. There'll be times you have like 3 different poison camps in one run, instead of guaranteeing that you get one of every status effect or element, which would just end up working so much better, because it will not only mean that you end up fighting different bosses, but it would also diversify the loot, and it will give you a better chance of finding a particular element that the Nightlord boss is actually going to be weaker to. But it doesn't work that way, and instead we just fight the same shitty bosses. And then my reward for making it to the end of the day is a Tibia Mariner boss with a bunch of skeletons, or a giant worm face, or a revenant, a Deathrite bird, a tree sentinel. Like, we literally fight these bosses as field bosses. Why are they also showing up at the end of the day? I don't care if they get 1 extra cool attack. I don't want to see them. We've already fought them thousands of times over already. Every single end of day boss should have either been an Elden Ring Remembrance fight or a Dark Souls boss fight. I don't know how they didn't come to this conclusion and decided to settle on trash bosses instead, except for the Godskin Doer. That boss was actually pretty cool, which is a sentence I'd never thought I'd hear myself say. But to only have those 8 main bosses out of a potential pool of like 25 bosses is just stupid. And the thing is, every single Nightlord has its own boss pool. So if you actually wanted to fight the Nameless King or the Dancer, you have to choose this specific Nightlord boss for it. Which honestly is not a bad concept, you know, assuming all of your end of day bosses are actually good, but they're not. There's like this massive quality discrepancy between the end of day bosses and the Nightlord bosses that is just ridiculous and it's jarring. Like, imagine this boss fight being the final step before this boss fight. Now, the next criticism I have is about the in-game events that can occur, whether it be the small ones or the Shifting Earth modifier. Now, it's not the events themselves that I have a problem with, it's the amount of times that they can actually occur. There's like over a dozen different events, and I feel like I get them like once every 10 runs. Like, the most consistent one that I get is this tornado that spawns in these NPC invaders. Like, out of all the events, the NPCs really, like the most annoying enemies to fight in every single game. Some other events can be kind of mid too, but there actually are some really cool and interesting events out there. Getting invaded by Morgott or a Nightlord boss. The Morgott invasion is the best event that can occur in my opinion, and I don't know why we didn't get more of these. Like, we could have had one like invader boss for each game. Like, where is the Pursuer invasion from Software? But when it does come to the unique Nightlord invasions that occur, they're also like inconsistent. Most of the time that they occur, always when the storm is closing in, and I never have a chance to complete it. It happened twice with a Sentient Pest invasion, and it happened twice with a Libra invasion too. And with a Libra invasion, it actually drains your health. And I had a time where I opened up the map to see where I have to go, and it was going to be outside of where the circle actually is. So in my mind, I was like, okay, I'll just do it in day 2 where I actually have more time to fight the boss, probably get some more money to just buy off the debuff itself. So that's basically what I did. I went to day 2 only to realize the merchant goes away after day 1, so I had to spend the remainder of my run with a quarter of my health gone. Now, I still ended up winning, but the point still stands. And when it does come to the Shifting Earth events, they're all really cool, help the game feel fresh, the level design is sound, it's visually pleasing, it is super risky but very rewarding, but the only problems I have with it is, once again, the main bosses there are just mid, and also they're just not random for some reason. Like, you can turn them off at any point. but you can't turn them back on. Like, I don't really know why they just didn't make them all random and like every single run has like a good chance of a shifting earth event occur, because it feels like way less special right now and like way more inconsistent, and it can also negatively impact the matchmaking too, which is going to be my next major talking point, the multiplayer. No, I am not going to talk about the solo play. I have already made a video on that. I think it's cool. It's my preferred way to play the game, but I just don't think it's that accessible for everybody. But when it does come to the multiplayer features, or more so the lack of multiplayer features, it's pretty bad, especially because that team composition and communication are heavily incentivized. For starters, there's like multiple Night Lord options and modifiers to choose from that is going to slow down the matchmaking by a ton. So in my opinion, there needed to be like an LFG, a looking for group system in place, to where you can put up a post saying what boss that you want to fight, what character you want to play with, what modifiers you want to run, and then someone that actually wants to do the same thing can just join up on you. It would have made perfect sense. And you know what else makes perfect sense? Crossplay. Why don't we have crossplay? Why is there no voice chat? Why is there no text chat? Why don't we at least have a good pinging system so we can clearly understand what our teammates want? Like, our characters have voices too. Why don't they talk in the game and actually communicate to each other? Like, you can definitely tell that this is their first multiplayer game they've made, so it is natural that they did like slack on a few of these features. It just makes a bit of sense. I also wanted to talk about things like having a potential point system put in place, like a scoring system, or like potential leaderboards, but honestly, I'm not even gonna bother. Now, in terms of the performance, the game ran perfectly fine for me. Now, it is a From Software game, so I don't really expect anything too crazy. I did experience some like frame drops and stutters towards the beginning, and specifically when I first load into a multiplayer game, there's always that little bit of lag. That might be dependent on who the host is though. And yes, the game is capped at 60 FPS. It is also like a slight graphical improvement over Elden Ring, but nothing too crazy because, you know, it still has to run on the PS4. So I do think it is like a little bit of a step up when it comes to the connectivity and performance over Elden Ring. I didn't experience any crashes or disconnects at all. I know other people did, but in my many of hours playing, that didn't happen to me a single time. Now, how replayable is the game and should you buy it? Honestly, it's gonna depend. I honestly didn't expect I'd enjoy the game this much. And I think the biggest replayability part for me, now that I've actually done all the bosses solo and actually done all the characters solo, is that I maybe could just do some challenge runs. I definitely want to try and memorize some of these Night Lord bosses, potentially min-max the game with all these cool relics that you can get, and probably just end up buying all the skins. But like, yeah, outside of that, there's not going to really be much, but it is a $40 game, so I'm not expecting it to have as much staying power as some of their other titles. But I think the game is always going to have some replay value because every run is going to be a little bit different. Like in my 70 hours, I didn't really get the same run 2 times in a row. That's just like naturally what a roguelike game is going to end up being. If they end up making those changes to have the randomized events just occur more often and just add some more fun bosses from Dark Souls, that would dramatically help the replay value. But as it is right now, it's possible. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. I enjoyed the game. I'm going to continue playing it. My next few videos are going to be gameplay related, whether it be like this gameplay of Dark Souls bosses or some Night Lord bosses or just me doing a solo run. And then I'll start doing those character guides. Anyway, catch you guys in the next. See ya.